This broken man will call you and say this 5 words, and your title will change. There is a strange kind of silence that settles over a person right before their life begins to shift in a way they never expected. It does not arrive loudly, and it rarely announces itself clearly at first. It moves quietly through ordinary moments, through late-night thoughts, through random memories that suddenly feel heavier than before. And somehow, while reading this, a part of you already knows exactly what I mean. Something inside you has been sensing a change connected to someone you tried to stop thinking about. Someone who disappeared emotionally long before they ever truly left your life. You may have convinced yourself that the chapter was over, that enough time had passed for everything to lose meaning, but the heart does not always move according to logic. Some connections stay unfinished in ways that are difficult to explain. They return in subtle waves, in moments where your mind drifts without permission, in quiet questions you never speak out loud. This man carries more weight inside him than most people realize. The world may see distance, silence, pride, or emotional confusion, but beneath all of that is someone who has been fighting an internal battle he never learned how to express properly. Stay with this, because there is something important here that your spirit has been trying to understand for a long time. What makes this harder is that you stopped expecting honesty from him. At some point, you became tired of trying to read mixed signals, tired of hoping for emotional clarity, tired of wondering whether your presence ever truly mattered in his life. So you slowly began protecting yourself in quiet ways. You learned how to smile while carrying unanswered feelings. You learned how to move forward while parts of your heart still looked backward from time to time. But even through all of that distance, there has remained an invisible thread between you and this person, something unfinished that neither of you fully closed. And lately that emotional tension has been growing stronger in ways you can feel but cannot fully explain. The most surprising part is not that he will reach out. Deep down, you already sensed that possibility long ago. The surprising part is what those few simple words will awaken inside you when they finally arrive. Not because they sound dramatic, and not because they suddenly erase every hurt or confusion, but because of what they reveal about everything he kept hidden beneath silence. Some words carry more truth than entire conversations ever could. Some moments change the way you see yourself, the way you carry your name, and the way you understand your worth. And before this story fully unfolds, you need to understand something carefully. The change that is coming is not only about him finally speaking. It is also about you finally seeing yourself differently after hearing what your heart waited so long to hear. Sometimes the heart recognizes a turning point long before the mind is willing to admit it. You may have noticed yourself becoming quieter lately, more reflective in ways you cannot fully explain, almost as if part of you has been standing near an emotional doorway waiting for something unresolved to finally reveal itself. The strange thing is that this waiting has not always felt painful. At times it has felt soft, almost sacred, like your soul knew there was still a conversation left unfinished between you and someone who once carried your emotions carelessly because he did not yet understand their value. This man has spent more nights thinking about you than he would ever openly confess. Not in the shallow way people romanticize longing, but in the heavy, honest way that comes when someone realizes they mishandled a rare connection. There were moments when he distracted himself, moments when pride convinced him to stay silent, moments when he tried to convince his own heart that moving on was easier than facing what he truly felt. But silence has a way of becoming exhausting when the truth underneath it keeps growing stronger. The memories he tried to bury kept returning in ordinary places, in familiar songs, in random conversations, in quiet evenings where your absence suddenly felt louder than anything around him. Don't miss what comes next, because this is where the emotional shift begins to deepen. You were never difficult to love. That is something you need to understand clearly. The confusion came from the fact that he was emotionally wounded long before he met you. People who carry unresolved pain often struggle to receive genuine connection without fear. They pull away when things become real. They hesitate when vulnerability asks them to soften. And somewhere inside him, there has always been a quiet awareness that you saw parts of him other people overlooked completely. You noticed the tiredness hidden behind his calm voice. You sensed the emotional pressure he tried to hide behind distance. Even when he failed to communicate properly, some part of you kept understanding him anyway. And that kind of understanding stays with a person longer than they expect. Now something within him is changing slowly but honestly. Not perfectly, not dramatically, but deeply. The weight he has been carrying is beginning to crack open emotionally, and with that comes a realization he can no longer avoid. He misses more than your presence. He misses the version of himself that existed when you were near him. That is why those 5 words matter more than they first appear. They are not simply words spoken during an emotional moment. They are a confession from someone who finally understands what your place in his life truly was. And when those words finally reach you, they will touch something inside your heart that has been quietly waiting for clarity without even realizing it. There are moments in life when a person finally becomes honest, not because they suddenly found confidence, but because carrying the truth any longer starts to feel heavier than the fear of speaking it aloud. That is the space this man has slowly been entering. The version of him that once hid behind silence is beginning to weaken. He has replayed conversations in his mind more times than you could imagine, remembering little details that seemed ordinary at the time but now feel impossible for him to forget. The way you listened without rushing him. The softness in your energy when he was emotionally distant. The strange comfort he felt around you, even during moments neither of you fully understood what was happening between you. For a long time he believed he still had time. Time to figure himself out. Time to return later when life felt less confusing. Time to sort through emotions he did not know how to handle properly. But emotional distance teaches painful lessons slowly. When someone meaningful is no longer close in the way they once were, the silence begins revealing truths that distraction cannot cover forever. He started noticing how empty certain conversations felt without depth. He realized how rare it was to feel truly seen. And somewhere during all of this, he began understanding that losing your emotional closeness changed him more than he expected. Stay with this, because the next realization is the one that quietly transformed everything inside him. The words he will speak are simple, yet they carry years of emotional hesitation behind them. 5 words that sound almost ordinary on the surface, but when spoken by someone who rarely allows himself to be vulnerable, they become unforgettable. I never stopped loving you. Not spoken dramatically, not perfectly rehearsed, just honestly, in the kind of voice that carries exhaustion, relief, regret, and sincerity all at once. And the moment you hear those words, something inside you will pause. Not because you depended on hearing them to feel complete, but because a deep part of your heart always sensed there was unfinished truth hiding beneath his silence. What changes your title is not the relationship status itself. It is the emotional shift that happens within you afterward. You stop seeing yourself as someone who was forgotten. You stop carrying the quiet burden of wondering whether your love was ever fully received. You begin understanding that your presence left an imprint strong enough to follow someone even through their confusion and emotional distance. There is healing in finally realizing that the love you gave was real, valuable, and deeply felt, even during moments when it seemed unrecognized. And while this connection still has its own journey ahead, the most important transformation may be the one happening inside your own heart, as you finally recognize the depth of what you truly meant to someone who could no longer keep pretending otherwise. A quiet transformation begins inside a person when they finally stop questioning whether they were enough for someone they genuinely cared about. It does not happen all at once. It unfolds slowly, almost gently, like light entering a room little by little after a very long night, and that is the space you are moving toward now. The call, the words, the emotional honesty you never expected to hear from him are not arriving to pull you backward into old pain. They are arriving to help you finally release the uncertainty you carried in silence for far too long. There was a season where you blamed yourself for things that were never truly yours to carry. You replayed memories trying to understand what changed, wondering if you had loved too openly, cared too deeply, or expected too much from someone who was emotionally overwhelmed by his own struggles. But real love does not become less meaningful simply because someone lacked the maturity to handle it properly at the time. That truth matters here. This man did not walk away because your heart lacked value. He stepped back because parts of him were still broken in ways he barely understood himself. And now, after sitting alone with his own thoughts for longer than expected, he is beginning to see clearly what your presence actually meant in his life. The beautiful thing about emotional growth is that it changes the way people return. Someone who once spoke with confusion begins speaking with intention. Someone who once avoided vulnerability begins craving honesty because pretending becomes exhausting. He no longer wants to hide behind emotional distance or pride that leaves everything unresolved. There is a softness growing inside him now, one that was shaped by absence, reflection, and the painful realization that some connections are too rare to lose carelessly. Don't miss what comes next, because the deeper meaning behind this story is not only about reconciliation, it is about recognition. You are finally stepping into a season where your heart no longer needs to beg for clarity from people who truly feel your worth. That is the title that changes first. You stop becoming the person who waits endlessly for emotional certainty. You become someone who understands their own presence carries depth, warmth, and impact beyond what they once believed. And strangely enough, when that shift happens inside you, relationships begin feeling different too. You no longer chase love nervously. You receive it calmly. You no longer shrink yourself to avoid losing people. You allow yourself to be fully seen. The call may begin with 5 simple words from a broken man, but the deeper story is about the quiet rebuilding of your own heart after spending too long underestimating what you truly deserve. Not every love story returns with loud apologies or dramatic moments. Some return quietly, through honesty that arrives after a long season of emotional distance and inner reflection. And when that moment finally comes for you, it may feel strangely calm instead of overwhelming. You may notice your heart becoming still for a second, almost as if a missing piece of understanding has finally settled into place. Because deep down, what you wanted was never endless chasing or emotional confusion. You simply wanted truth. You wanted clarity that felt real enough to rest your heart for the first time in a long while. This man has been learning difficult lessons in silence. Life has a way of slowing people down when they keep avoiding what matters most to them. In the middle of his own emotional exhaustion, he began recognizing something important about you that he failed to fully appreciate before. Your energy brought peace instead of pressure. Your presence made him feel understood without needing to perform or pretend. Even now, after all the distance and hesitation, those feelings have not disappeared from him. If anything, they have become clearer with time. There's something important here that many people overlook. Sometimes separation does not erase connection. Sometimes it reveals its depth more honestly than closeness ever could. And as this emotional truth unfolds, you will notice something changing inside yourself too. You are no longer carrying the same ache you once held quietly in your chest. You are no longer asking yourself whether you were forgettable or easy to replace. His words will not magically solve every emotion overnight, but they will confirm something your spirit already sensed beneath the silence. You mattered deeply. Your love reached places inside him that even he could not fully explain at the time. That realization will help you release years of quiet self-doubt and step into a softer, more secure understanding of your own worth. So when the moment finally arrives and those 5 words are spoken, receive them calmly. Not from a place of desperation, but from a place of emotional clarity. You do not need to rush the future or force answers before they naturally unfold. What matters most is that your heart is no longer trapped inside uncertainty. The version of you that once waited anxiously for recognition is slowly fading away, replaced by someone who understands that real connection leaves lasting marks on people, even when silence tried to hide it for a while. And maybe that is the real change this story was always leading toward. Not simply a changed relationship title, but a changed understanding of yourself, your value, and the quiet power your love has carried all along. Some endings are not truly endings at all. They are pauses between 2 people who needed time to understand themselves before they could understand each other properly. And if you look back carefully now, you may realize that this entire journey changed you in ways you never expected. The waiting taught you patience. The silence taught you emotional strength. The confusion taught you how deeply you are capable of loving without losing the softness of your heart. Even during moments when you felt unseen, something inside you kept growing quietly, becoming wiser, calmer, and more emotionally grounded than before. The beautiful truth is that you no longer need someone else's attention to prove your worth. That is why this moment feels different now. Earlier versions of you may have searched desperately for reassurance, replayed conversations endlessly, or questioned your own value whenever someone emotionally pulled away. But you are not standing in that same emotional place anymore. You have learned how to carry yourself through uncertainty with grace. You have learned that genuine love cannot be forced, manipulated, or rushed. It reveals itself naturally when hearts stop hiding from the truth And somewhere along the way, this broken man finally stopped running from his own feelings long enough to recognize what your presence truly meant to him. When he calls, what you will hear underneath those 5 words is not perfection. You will hear sincerity. You will hear someone who finally became emotionally honest after spending too long trapped inside pride, fear, and unresolved emotions. And strangely, the moment may feel softer than you imagined. No dramatic music, no impossible promises, just 2 hearts standing at a quieter place than before, finally able to understand what was once too emotionally tangled to explain clearly. Stay with this feeling because it carries an important reminder your heart deserves to keep forever. You were never too much to love. You were never difficult to choose. The right understanding simply arrived later than you expected. And now, instead of carrying old questions into your future, you are stepping forward with a calmer heart and clearer eyes. Whether this connection continues growing slowly from here or simply leaves behind healing and closure, one thing has already changed permanently: the way you see yourself. You now understand that your love was real, your presence was meaningful, and your heart left a lasting impact even during seasons of silence. And sometimes that quiet realization becomes the beginning of an entirely new chapter within a person's life.